Hi there, Coach Bob here, the founder of the Visionary Forum. Very excited to have Shelby Scarborough with us. Shelby, how are you today?
I'm awesome. Thanks. How are you?
Good, thank you. So excited to have you be one of our three speakers, presenters, thought leaders at our summit coming up September 8th, 9th, and 10th, just south of Grand Rapids. And you are an author of several things. You're the founder of the Global School of Entrepreneurship, an entrepreneur, been a part of EO for almost 30 years. And so I love the topic. Again, you have many topics, but we're going to be talking about pioneers, dreamers, and doers. So, what does that mean? What are we going to be talking about? How can we visionaries learn from that?
Well, a visionary and a pioneer are kind of synonymous in my mind. But I look at the lens of pioneers being somebody, because I grew up with a grandfather who was very famous in his day. And so
Right.
he was sort of the emblematic pioneer for me. And then I went on to work in an interesting job in the White House and the State Department, and had a company after that did the same things that I did at the White House and the State Department, was handling dignitaries. So I ended up dealing with a lot of different pioneers in my day. People, and when I really look back on it, I'm like, they're all were pioneers in their own way, one way or the other. So it was really inspirational for me to think of the qualities of a pioneer, and what does it take to be a pioneer? What does it take to achieve your goals, to set out and put that in front of you and actually make something happen?
So that's interesting because again, I'm a big fan of knowing that I'm a visionary. And when Gino was my coach, Gino Wickman, the founder of EOS, helped me. I thought I was a terrible business owner. And I'm like, I have no business running a business. He's like, oh, absolutely. You're a visionary. And if you put structure in place, then you definitely have, and the right people, then you definitely have a role in it. So I've identified that. And obviously, we're the visionary forum, but I love the word pioneers. So what I'm hearing you talk about is, again, dreamers and doers. A lot of us visionaries are dreamers, but like he says, vision without traction is hallucination. so it's
Exactly.
so it's actually getting shit done. So yeah,
Yes.
tell me a little bit more about that. Like, how are we pioneers? How can we learn to, do truly realize our vision? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, well, let me use my grandfather as an example. He was a pioneer aviator in the 30s. So he decided he was doing all sorts of really interesting things in aviation, but he was sort of one of many for a while. He learned how to do stunt flying, and he did stunt flying in the movies for Howard Hughes and his Hell's Angels movie, and he did passenger stuff. He was a private pilot, et cetera. But he started to think, you know what, I really want to kind of make a mark on aviation.
Right.
And he thought up, I want to be the first to circumnavigate the globe alone, solo.
Wow.
So talk about a big goal. If you think about that, it's pretty cray
Right.
cray. I mean, if I wouldn't think about doing it now in a small plane, much
Right.
less when he did it. And they didn't have any instruments, and he had a single engine. There was no temperature control or pressurization or anything like that. So you can imagine just taking off out of New York City and heading out over the Atlantic, being maybe I think the third or fourth person to go over the Atlantic after Lindbergh solo.
Wow.
So what does that take? I mean, that you just look at that and you say, what does that take? Obviously courage, obviously vision,
Right.
imagination, like you said, for sure. But then there's the execution. So then he needed a plan, and he needed a team, and he
Huh.
needed a cohesive communications plan, because think about the communications in the 1930s.
Right.
They had to get permission to fly over different countries. They had to write, they had to wait, I mean, just the sheer logistics of getting something like that done in any
Right.
short period of time was just astounding. So what do you have to have with that? Perseverance. These are just fundamental things that the qualities, when I look at him, he's the perfect example of what we need to look at in a person to aspire to do great things. And everything doesn't have to be monumental, like flying around the world solo. But if we apply all of those basic characteristics to that kind of methodically, but we don't lose that energy around dreaming,
Right.
that's where the magic happens.
I love that. And my mission, I used to make fun of Gino a little bit. I've been good friends with him since before he started EOS. And he openly says this, obsessed with helping entrepreneurs get everything they want out of their business. And I've realized I'm obsessed with helping visionaries get everything they want out of their lives. And what's been cool is as we've gathered these visionaries together and realized, yeah, we're kind of crazy, but we aren't alone, and that there's a purpose and a place for us. So not just for us visionaries, but as you were talking about, even helping others to understand what is vision. What's your vision for your job, for your goals, for our kids? And a lot of people are like, I don't even know what you're talking about. But it's
Right.
okay to dream and think, and then, like you say, put an execution plan in place.
And then you reverse engineer it, right? How do
Right,
I get there? So here's the objective. Now, how do I get there? And putting really concrete things in place to achieve those goals. That's not always easy for a dreamer. That's not,
right,
it's, and so there's lots of opportunities to engage other people to help you and to recognize what I know I've had to learn is to recognize my strengths and then
right.
fill in the gaps in those places that I either don't like to do something or I'm just not that good at it and somebody else is a better fit.
Right. Yeah, I love knowing the what I'm trying to do and often the why and the passion obviously behind it, but then I'm not the how person. So again, to engage people on that vision, because when I'm the how person, we're in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, and many people are, I learned to be kind of an octopus in my world. I learned to be a jack of all trades and do a lot of different things. My own IT person for a while. I started a business in 1990 and
Right.
people weren't doing what I was doing in that sense, in that way. And the computer age was just coming about, believe it or not. So, having to be your own IT person at an early stage and age made me very self-sufficient in a lot of ways. But, as you grow, as you expand, you need to bring other people into the fold to help you because it's not just, even though he flew around the world solo and he attempted to fly around the world solo, he had a lot of people helping him get to that point that he could take off by himself.
That's interesting because I feel like a lot of us are on the hero's journey, as Joseph Campbell talks about. And so that's call to adventure. And that I know I've been like, okay, I need to be the hero here. And that's kind of fun, especially when I had more energy. But I don't have to be the hero. And it's just as rewarding to accomplish something. And it's not all me. So that's a great lesson.
He didn't succeed, unfortunately, but his story was much greater than his competitor, who he ended up losing the race to, was Wiley Post, is the name that history now knows as the person who flew around the world solo. But
Right,
Wiley didn't take off for a long time because my grandfather disappeared from the radar, literally, over Siberia, and he was lost in Siberia, feared to be dead.
right,
What was happening on the ground was he was trying to survive. And there's a whole story around that era, about that time period, about what he did to get himself back into be able to be rescued, because
right.
out in the barren tundra of Siberia during Stalin's Soviet Union, this was really
Wow.
quite an amazing story. So that's a story of survival and, again, grit and perseverance and courage and also the humility, the humbling effect of failure. And so
Right.
adding that into the story makes it just that much more rich and meaningful for me and for everybody, and actually taught him quite a bit about himself too.
Well, and we talked briefly about, courage and perseverance and drive, which a lot of us have, but I know I've doubted either myself or the vision and now I want to give up and whatnot. And yet that's inspirational. I mean, that's real courage.
Real courage. When you're facing death, absolutely 100% facing death in the look, staring it in the face
Right.
and saying, and kind of reckoning, what did I do? Was my vision too big? Was I too arrogant? And having to reckon, those are very real things that everybody goes through in a way, but they aren't doing it in life and death circumstances. So,
Right.
they have the luxury of basically working through those potential failure points without, worrying that they're going to die.
Right. Oh, that's crazy. So our rally cry for the Visionary Forum, excuse me, is Viva la Visionary. And it's been interesting because it's resonated with so many of us where a lot of times I didn't fit in school or I didn't fit in businesses because I wasn't great at reading directions and details and managing. And so it was kind of like, eh. And so even a lot of the systems where they put process in place, a lot of times we kind of get blamed. It's like, oh, there goes Bob again. And so, it's been a real rally cry. What does Viva la Visionary mean to you as a visioneer and a pioneer?
Well, the word viva meaning life, right? To live in life is just so crucial. To me, it's the essence. To me, it's the essence of what turns me on, what makes me tick,
Right,
is thinking outside the box and thinking of new ways to solve problems. That's what gives me energy,
right,
So to life,
right,
that's pretty
right. Well,
simple.
it's celebrating our individuality, right, and us living and being us. I find a lot of visionaries that come to us, they've implemented a system, which again, we hit the ceiling of complexity. So we do need to put people and process in place. And then the visionary is kind of like, well, what do I do now? It's like, well, no, be you. And that's the, celebrate our quirkiness and our uniqueness rather than trying to fit in, because I know I can't fit in with, with all of society.
That
Uh,
is so, it's so true. That is so true. I know that I've gone through that all through my life of feeling like just even everything from being the tallest person in sixth grade, at the time, and feeling like the Jolly Green Giant when, now I'm average height basically, but
right.
getting an early growth spurt makes you stand out. And so I had trouble with the standing out part early in my life, and I've
Right.
learned to embrace that. And I still try to come at the world with a bit of humility, but also recognize that, look, we have our gifts, so let's celebrate them.
I love that. I love it. So I did not like school. And so tell me a little bit about the school you've co-founded, the Global School of Entrepreneurship. That sounds like a school I would actually thrive in. So tell me a little bit about that.
You're exactly right. We call it a new way to MBA, because entrepreneurs in particular, and there's many other people that fall into the same category, aren't in many cases able to go to a traditional school, to a traditional program, because we found that the programs actually are set up to benefit the way the school works and
Right.
not the way the entrepreneur works. So we've reverse engineered that, as a visionary might, I suppose. And
Right.
and said, look, let's do, I created a product that I want, because I've always wanted to get my MBA. I've tried several times on several occasions, got into school right out of college, and then I got a job in the White House, so I postponed it and never went. And sequence of events like that throughout my life. But then I've always wanted it. But then you get to a point where you're like, do you really need it? But there's these benchmarking, there's the group, the camaraderie of learning together. And if you're a lifelong learner, that's a really great space. And then
Right.
why not we call it mastermind to MBA. So why not, if there's masterminds are very popular these days for a lot of good reasons, because people are into lifelong learning and sharing and learning from peers and in cohort environments. So why not do that and get a degree? And we can take somebody who doesn't have an undergraduate degree and give them credit for lived experience, which I think any college can do, but they don't. And
Right.
so we give lived experience credits, and can give you credit towards that, so that if somebody doesn't have an undergraduate degree, but they've been in business for 7 years at least, then we can say that you qualify to enter the MBA program. So you can kind of skip the undergrad degree and just go straight to MBA. So it's kind of, it's just a really unique way of getting an education, and we can do it one-on-one. We have somebody coming up who's starting their one-on-one program with a professor and the student, and that way they can do it in an expedited and very custom manner. So we're very custom focused to how we execute this program, which is something that most big schools, with all this legacy of tenured professors and
Right.
real estate they've got to keep up and all that, we don't have any of that. So we can concentrate on the need of the entrepreneur and get them the education they want.
So you're pioneering a new way for entrepreneurs to learn. I love it.
Yeah, and in fact, I think we may be pioneering the AI MBA. So how about taking your business? Everybody's kind of panicked about AI right now. So how about taking your business and using the Mastermind to MBA program to re-engineer your business, looking at all the elements of your business, the management, the communications, the finance, every element of your business, and re-engineer it using AI, and figure out where you need to use AI and put it to work, and actually doing it and getting the degree by doing.
I love it. A lot of people are concerned about, the world is screwed up. I think this is the greatest time ever to be alive. I call it the wisdom age. And it's not that everyone is wise necessarily, but you have your experience, I have mine, you have your beliefs, I have mine. And so if we are in a non-judgmental conversation, I'm going to learn from you, but even I'm going to learn as I then speak, vulnerably. And so you may or may not convince me, I may or may not convince you, but it's the art of learning together, as Dr. Bill Isaacs talks about in his book. So I love what you're doing with David, with the School of Entrepreneurship, the books you've written on civility, and the one you're writing on pioneering. And so, and we're excited and honored to have you at the summit and to be another voice of wisdom. And again, a lot of us visionaries, we love to learn, but it's not in that old way. And so this is awesome. All
Little
right. Well,
storytelling goes a long way.
right, exactly. Well, great to spend time with you, and we're excited to spend even more time with you at the summit.
Thank you. Likewise. Talk to you later.
All right, Shelby, have a great day.